Welcome to the Women and Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. Esther is a respected leader in the field of personal financial advice with over 25 years of experience. After going through her own significant and challenging life-changing events, she overcame fear and self-doubt to launch her own successful advisory firm. Now Esther is ready to share her practical and personal experiences to help other women clear their hurdles and brave life's transitions. In this way, she inspires women to lead fulfilling and confident lives.
Hello and welcome to Women and Wealth with Esther Szabo from Gates Pass Advisors. Today we're talking about a dirty word. I'm gonna let Esther talk about what that is. Go ahead, Esther. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Eric.
I don't want to spoil what the dirty word is, but why don't you tell us?
Oh, it's an awful word. We all hate it. It's right up there with diet. It's the word budget. It's a 6-letter dirty word.
I know a lot of 4-letter ones, but a 6-letter dirty word, budget. Okay, why is it such a dirty word?
Well, for everyone, it just brings up, what do you think of? People think of restriction. I can't get what I want. I have to, live a really limited. It brings up limitations. It brings up being controlled. All of those things. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And the reason that I think it's so important, I try and look at it in a little bit different light. When we have these really challenging headlines about market volatility, which continue to come, and based on my research, reading, understanding, I think we're going to continue to have this market volatility. It's very common that those headlines produce a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if one's in transition, on top of this, the market's kind of going through a transition right now. And then one is in their own transition. Their life has changed. Decisions need to be made. Seeing things like this on the news and in the papers, I am still a newspaper reader. That may date me, but I am. Or whenever we turn on our computer or look at our phone, seeing this type of information over and over can really impact one's ability to make good decisions.
Why do you say that? How do you think that impacts that?
It can be so hard to take action. It can be so hard to know, which was the right way to go. The news is there to stimulate our eyeballs, to get our attention, to have us pulled in. How do any of us get pulled into anything? A lot of it is through the emotion that it fosters up in us. And it's so common that the words that are used are particularly used to trigger feelings of either anxiety in the world of finance or greed, where we think, oh my gosh, we've got to get on the bandwagon. This happened a lot. This happened a lot in the late 90s when the market was going up, up, up. People felt like I have to get in there before it all goes away, and it got greedy about how much they could get from the market and overextended themselves in equity exposure. Now what we're seeing more is this anxiety that can really limit people's ability to participate in what is necessary to some extent for just about everyone, which is participating in the market to achieve one's goals.
Absolutely. It drives me bananas, to be honest with you, with the local news a lot of times. They're more forceful with the message a lot of times, like 7 foods in your refrigerator that can kill you. And then they say tonight at 10 o'clock and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now I can't eat, right? There's nothing I can do because something in my fridge is going to kill me. And now I've got to wait till 10 to find out. And it's ridiculous. But so that's more of a blatant thing, obviously. But how do you encourage people in these situations, specifically with the market news, when it's just kind of subtle stuff, but it's constant bombardment?
Yeah, constant bombardment and very distracting. What we do is in the meetings that I have with clients, we look at what we can control. We can't control the markets. We can't control Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed Reserve. We cannot control China-U.S. trade policy. We cannot control what GM is doing in terms of laying people off. There's so many things that are way out of our control, but there is something we can control, and that is how we spend our money. And recently, I have one of my clients who's sorting out her life. She's through what's called the stage of ending in transition, where in her case, it was a divorce. The divorce has been long gone, actually, for about 10 years, and she is newly married for about a year. And she's adjusted to those changes. And now she's in another area called passage, which is where one really starts to put their life together and has the presence of mind to do it. And she is just having a heck of a time getting clarity around what expenses does she have. And it can make it so challenging to plan for somebody. Women also can tend to focus on others. It's such a part of who we are. We are the nurturers and tenders. So at our age, which is often in the 50s, we are in that sandwich generation where we are looking out for our parents. Are they okay? I know my mom is in her mid-90s at this point, and it's saying, does she have the care that she needs? How do we bring on the care? How do we talk to her about bringing on the care? How do we navigate when she says no? And we say yes. All those types of things, as well as children who are launching and getting off to college and sorting out their lives. And our energy can go outward so easily. You add that to a very distracting market, and there's only so much energy to go around. One of the things that I have done with her is let's just slow down. We have goals for the planning process. We have things we want to accomplish, things that we want to see, but we have to slow it down to really get this piece about, gosh, what are your expenses? Bring that into focus together.
Esther, do you find this to be true for most of your clients or all of your clients?
At some point, it is true for most of my clients, but there are phases as one again goes through transition and goes through that passage point where life normalizes again. One is in the new normal where things are pretty consistent. There's a knowledge and a consistency around how much income is coming in. What expenses do I have? And I see it. One goes to a place where it's very, very consistent. With transition, what happens is it gets thrown up in the air, and it can happen at any point in one's life. I had a client, Linda, and Linda has now passed, but her husband passed before her, and he was an executive here in Silicon Valley, and they hadn't had to watch money for years. They hadn't had to worry about it. They had been married for 40 years, and they had gone through that period where early on, yes, you have to budget and watch every single penny. And then they'd moved on from that. And then when he passed away, the way it had been set up, this was before we were working together, the way it was set up is that when he passed away, his pension stopped.
Oh, ouch.
And yes, ouch, that's a big change. And obviously when one spouse passes away who's on Social Security, the Social Security doesn't continue. Each person gets their own Social Security, whether it's based on their work record or that of their spouses, but there's only one Social Security income that comes in. So another chunk of income went away. And I clearly remember her going, oh my gosh, I haven't had to look at this in years. She was in her 70s at that point. And it is a big change. So what I do in those cases, because that's when one is at the stage of ending. The spouse has passed away. Something has clearly happened from which one can't go back. And one hasn't gone through the passage of resetting. This has just happened. There is no way that I'm going to ask somebody in that position, gee, tell me everything that you're spending on cable TV and on your pets and on your groceries. Let's go through. It's too soon. They need to know that they have enough coming in to cover their housing expenses, their basic expenses, what they have coming up to cover the legal costs, if any, final expenses, if any. That's what one needs to know. So we just keep it limited in terms of where are you for the next 6 months, the next year? Mm-hmm. Where are those sources of income or reserves coming from so that you know that you can relax around that while you navigate all the stages of, in this particular transition, it was the loss of a spouse. And sometimes I even create a picture for them. You know, they always say, a picture speaks 1,000 words. And a picture of just, this is the bucket, if you will, of where that's what's paying for these expenses. This bucket is paying for those expenses. That can be really helpful. So that is for someone who's suddenly confronted with a life change. And there are those who are then navigating an anticipated change like retirement, or like this client that I spoke of a little bit earlier, where she's really trying to get her arms around where she spends funds and where she will need to spend funds. It's trying to make a decision. She's trying to make a few decisions about work and investment. And we need more extensive information at this point on which to base those very critical decisions.
Esther, I know you've been working with clients for a number of years, and there's a lot of strategies that you use, and there's got to be a lot of tools that you would use with clients. Are there tools that you recommend to clients?
There are. I have come down basically to the best resource, I think, is to actually bring on another person to help. I will talk about the software tools. But I have found it most effective to use what's called a daily money manager. And that's through the American Association of Daily Money Managers. And that's actually a person who can come in, get you set up with a system, get you started with, say, Quicken. Everyone knows the personal budgeting software Intuit produces called Quicken. They can get you set up with a system like that. They can get you set up on the biggest issue is the categories in Quicken. How do you want to categorize when you go to Costco? Is that food? Is that recreation? Is that dining? Is that, furniture? All of those things. And people tear their hair out over that. I basically say, typically we just put it in. We might just say it's Costco.
Exactly. Everything is sold at Costco. So, yeah.
And so get set up with the categories, and then they get you set up with a download, and then they can maintain it, or then you can maintain it. What I really like about a daily money manager is that they just lift it off of one's shoulders. Going back to that issue of how much time do we really have? And people say, but I can do this. I'm smart enough to do this. And it's not an issue of intelligence. Just like using a financial advisor and a financial planner. I've heard this so many times, but I should be able to figure this out. Oh my goodness, there are so many different pieces to what we do that it's really hard to just recreate all that by yourself. And our money is so personal to us. Sometimes it is very hard to be honest with ourselves about where our money is going.
Yep.
Having somebody brought on gives a certain level of distance. Like, they will just deal with the data. They're data people. They love data. They love dealing with it. And then they can create a report that I can then use with the client. So obviously, I'm a big advocate of that. It's something that I use as well personally for years and years. It's too bad my husband is not here to give a testimonial, but for years and years, I spent a few hours every weekend or every other weekend toting up all that Quicken stuff, working it all out. I would download and reconcile every few days and spend all this time. And then at the end of the day, it's like, well, why?
Yeah.
I have great data, but why am I spending my time with this? Is this really the best use of my time? And after he passed away, I really did need to watch my energy, and I did bring on somebody through a daily money manager, and it's really, really helpful for me. The other resource is the National Association of Professional Organizers, or NAPO. They are really helpful too, because there's a level of organization that's required here. Where do you put your incoming bills? That's, even right there, where do you do with the mail? How do you store it until you're ready to work on it? Where do you put your bills and all your things after you're done with them? How do you file them? What's your filing system?
Exactly.
They're excellent at setting up that as well. Daily money managers can do it too. I'm just giving two resources there, because a NAPO member, NAPO is typically much more on organizing spaces, getting things cleared up. And I'm a big advocate of bringing in a professional organizer. They've been a huge help to me too. When I had to clear out my husband's closet, when I had to clear up the room that was his office and make it into a spare bedroom because people were coming for the memorial and I wanted them to have a place to stay. It was wonderful having a NAPO member help me with that, because they had some distance, but they were also very caring about the sensitivity of the process, and they got it done with me.
That's perfect. I mean, it's in both those scenarios, you're getting an outside perspective. And so the emotion isn't there on their side, even though they're very caring and they take their time with you, they're not the ones having to make an emotional decision. They can help walk you through that to see both sides of the coin or the benefits or the negatives, so you can have that discussion, and they can help move you in one direction or another if you just need a little bit of a little push if you need.
They do. And so many clients are scared of that, Eric. So many clients are scared that if they bring in somebody like a professional organizer, it's all going to be push, push, push. Why are you keeping this? Why do you have this? Get rid of this. And that has certainly not been my experience or the experience of others that I've known. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's done in such a way, just like financial planning. Sometimes people can get right in, they bring all their data, bum. That is so much the exception rather than the rule. Yeah. But when somebody is coming in to help clear a space, sometimes it is just, help me with this space. I know I want to get rid of this. This stuff, I don't know yet. Okay, great. This is how we can stage it and where we can put it, and let yourself transition through the decision-making process of what to keep and let go of. And even check in each year. I go, I don't really need this. I don't really need David's collection of mouse pads.
All right.
I can let that go. And I took pictures of it, though, because who else has a collection of mouse pads? I didn't need to keep them, but I did keep a photo of what he had collected.
That's nice. Esther, if somebody's not quite ready to have somebody come in and help them, like a daily money manager or people from NAPO, what other things could they be doing? What other things would you recommend that they do on their own?
Well, I did mention Quicken. So Quicken software is available to anybody. That's very widely used and built with lots and lots of bells and whistles, typically more than what anybody needs. But that's a very common resource, and there's lots of tools online and in the software itself to help you get started and set up. Beyond that, one can even use, if one has Excel, Microsoft Excel on their computer, there are all sorts of templates in there. Typically, one doesn't search for them, but if you do a search in Excel for personal budget, there are pre-templates in there. You can just plug in your own numbers and use one of their spreadsheets to track that. Okay. There's a software called at pearbudget.com. It has a charge after the first 30 days of $5 a month. They say $4.95. Let's just call it $5. And that's also very simple to use as well. You plug in what you think you're going to be spending, what you think your income is, and then it helps you track on a monthly basis. The other one that
Pear budget?
Pear budget.
Pear,
yes.
Okay, so pear as in the fruit?
Yes, pear as in the fruit.
Okay.
Pear.
Pear budget. Got it. Okay.
And the last one that is used a lot, I don't have personally with clients a lot of experience with them using it, but it's Mint. And I know that's also an Intuit product. So Mint is something that people use as well.
All right. When people are doing this on their own, what challenges do you find when they have to tackle this by themselves?
I almost want to say there's one challenge, and that's getting overwhelmed. Overwhelmed with the amount of data. If you go back to when our parents were budgeting for the house for the family, there were just a very few categories. There was utilities, mortgage, transportation, clothing, food, those types of things. Now, because of electronic transactions and Amazon and all the things we do online, there's so many different transactions that go on each day.
Absolutely.
And so many different ways to list them. What I suggest, though, is to keep it very simple. Sometimes people say, okay, I'm going to go back the whole last year and I'm going to get this done. And I go, don't even try that is my suggestion. Try just going back this last month. So right now we're in the month of November. So perhaps go back to the month of October and say, okay, where did the money get spent then? Look at the credit card statements. But be consistent. Try this for a month going backwards, and then moving forward, track in those categories that you've selected based on your previous month's spending. Track in those areas make a commitment for 1 month. If that feels too long, do it for 1 week. But again, this is why I often default to going back to bringing somebody on, because they can be so helpful. They're just so used to all of this and really getting engaged.
And one other point that I think this is so important is because, and at least in my life, I've found multiple times when a company, whether it's a subscription that I have, whether it's my internet or it's the cable, they mischarge you. They make mistakes, and they're not going to call you up and say, hey, by the way, we made a mistake for the last 3 months and overcharged you by $20. You kind of have to find that yourself. So just practicing this and doing that on a monthly basis, where did my money go? You may realize, hey, wait a second, there's something that was charged to me that shouldn't have been, and you can recoup something. So I think it's important. I've seen that trend lately, and it really bothers me. Esther, once somebody is using a system like this, I'm assuming you want them to bring it to you, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So what do you do with the information once you receive it?
It's so great for us. Those of us who are financial planners, we just want to kiss the feet of people who bring us this good information, because it helps so much.
I bet.
Because without knowing how the money is spent, their planning really becomes a lot more just like throwing darts. We can say, okay, well, if you spend $5,000 a month, this is what it looks like. Or, oh, it's $10,000 a month. It's a totally different picture. So we can really work and hone in on various scenarios with a client. Basically, what we do to really step it back even more is we take the information and put it into our software is one thing. Then we take some of that information, because some of those things won't be recurring for the rest of our lives. I know in my own case with my own planning, I had shared this already on an earlier podcast where my planner said, well, I don't think you can retire at 60, because that was my original target age, just to see what it was. But the way that we got it to work is I went back and looked at the data, and I said, I won't be buying business clothes after I retire. I don't need to have this level of budget after I retire. So we could cut that down. The same thing with, I'm still seeing a counselor following my husband's passing, someone who worked with us for 20 years. And at some point, she's in her mid-70s, she will retire. Well, I'm not going to go out necessarily unless I need to and replace her at the same level. So we could play with some of these things, and those are creating different scenarios. And with that, we can really determine, for example, how much income do you need that's supplemental to your portfolio to achieve the results we want to achieve? How much needs to be invested to attain a goal down the road, 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, to provide for a retirement, perhaps even provide for a college? Because to bring it around full circle, it allows us to set timeframes on different expenses, and then we know, okay, what's invested in the market? I'm not touching it in December or January or February of 2018, 19. I'm not even going to look at it until I'm 70 years old at the earliest, and if then, only for a portion. So it really reduces the infliction of those headlines on us. We can look at it and go, well, I don't like it, but I don't need that money. That's not my bank account there. That's my future account. And with that, with all this work and effort to bring it together, it really keeps a client free to then focus on navigating their new life of fulfillment.
That is awesome. And that's something that I think everybody wants and needs.
It's what we're all searching for, and that's why it can be so rattling when the markets move. We think, oh my God, it's going to take away that fulfillment. It's going to take away that ability. I'd better not participate, or I'd better to pull out, and it shifts it away from, again, those things we cannot control to something that we really can.
Yeah, that's so important. And for anybody listening to this, if you're doing these things on your own, it's a little difficult to have that conversation with yourself. When you see these headlines, you can ask yourself, well, are we going to be okay, or are we not going to be okay? Emotion takes over. That's why it's so important to have somebody like Esther in your corner, that when you see these things and you have those concerns, you can give her a call. You can shoot her an email to say, hey, I noticed a few things on the TV. What are your thoughts? And they can be that voice of reinsurance and the voice of peace to give you that moment of saying, okay, you're good. Right? This is what we planned for. And
Absolutely.
To hear that is invaluable. It really is. So any other closing thoughts today, Esther?
I think we've covered it really well today, Eric. Thank you.
I think so too. And thank you all for listening to the Women in Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Esther comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And if you are hearing of friends or family that have these concerns, share this podcast, please. Let them reach out to Esther and get that same reassurance that you're getting. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at Gates Pass Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Women and Wealth podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you receive notifications of new podcasts as they become available. Check out the website at www.gatespassadvisors.com for more information. This content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions expressed and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.